Did you know that one of the most beloved Hollywood love stories almost never happened? Before a single frame was shot, the director was fighting to keep his lead actress, the studio wanted a different star entirely, and the man who would become the film's heart nearly walked away from the role forever. Sabrina, made in 1954, is a movie that looks smooth and perfect on screen. Behind the camera, everything was on the edge of falling apart. Let's dive in and discover 20 weird and amazing facts about Sabrina. Number 20. The play that started it all before. There was a movie called Sabrina. There was a play called Sabrina Fair. Samuel A. Taylor wrote it for the Broadway stage, and it opened in the autumn of 1953. The story of a chauffeur's daughter who falls in love above her social class was a hit with theater audiences right away. People loved the idea of a young woman who goes away to Paris, transforms herself, and returns home as someone entirely new. Hollywood producer William Holden saw the play and immediately knew it had movie magic in it. He bought the rights and handed the project to a director who was already becoming a legend, Billy Wilder. What seemed like a simple romantic story was about to become something much bigger. The stage and the screen are very different worlds, but sometimes a story is so strong that it survives the journey between them. This one did. It looked like a quiet beginning. It turned out to be the start of something extraordinary. Number 19. Billy Wilder's Reluctant Yes. Billy Wilder was not rushing to direct a romantic comedy in 1953. He had just finished a dark and serious film and was looking for his next challenge. When the script for Sabrina landed on his desk, he was not immediately excited. Romance was not really where his heart lived as a filmmaker. He was famous for sharp, cynical stories with dark twists, movies like Sunset Boulevard and Double Indemnity. A fairy tale about a chauffeur's daughter did not exactly fit his style, but something about the contrast pulled him in. The idea of a girl who is invisible to the wealthy world around her and who slowly becomes the most important person in the room, that transformation interested him deeply. He agreed to direct, and then he did something typical for Wilder. He rewrote the entire script himself, together with his writing partner, Ernest Lehman. He sharpened every scene, added wit and sadness and irony. Started as a sweet love story, grew layers and teeth. It looked like a simple choice. It became one of the defining films of his career. Number 18. The Audrey Hepburn Gamble. When Billy Wilder decided he wanted Audrey Hepburn to play Sabrina, not everyone agreed with him. Hepburn had only just become famous the year before, after winning an Academy Award for Roman Holiday in 1953. She was new. She was untested in Hollywood's eyes beyond that one great performance. Some people at Paramount Pictures thought the studio should go with a bigger, more established name. But Wilder was firm. He saw something in Hepburn that no one else could quite explain, a quality of being both fragile and strong at the same time, a look of innocence combined with something very old and wise behind the eyes. He fought for her. He won. And the gamble paid off in a way that still echoes today. Hepburn's performance as Sabrina, shy, hopeful, heartbroken, and finally triumphant, is considered one of the finest in Hollywood history. She made the character real. She made the fairy tale feel honest. That was not a sure thing before filming began. That was a leap of faith. And the leap landed perfectly. Number 17. Humphrey Bogart did not want to be there. Humphrey Bogart was cast as Linus Larrabee, the older, serious brother who eventually falls for Sabrina, and he hated being in the film almost from the start. Bogart was a tough, street-smart actor known for hard-boiled roles in films like Casablanca and The Maltese Falcon. He did not see himself as a romantic lead opposite a young, waif-like actress. He felt out of place. He felt miscast. He made no secret of his frustration. On set, he was difficult. He clashed with Billy Wilder constantly. He argued about his lines, his blocking, the tone of his scenes. He complained openly about working with William Holden, who played his brother. He reportedly made the atmosphere on set very uncomfortable at times. And yet, when you watch the finished film, Bogart's awkwardness with romance works. His discomfort reads as the character's discomfort. A stiff, emotionally closed man slowly opening his heart. His real feelings accidentally became the performance. Sometimes the actor's resistance and the character's resistance are exactly the same thing. That was not acting, that was truth wearing a costume. Number 16. William Holden's complicated feelings. William Holden played David Larrabee, the charming, irresponsible younger brother who Sabrina is in love with at the start of the film. And on set, life began to imitate art in a way that nobody planned. Holden developed very real feelings for Audrey Hepburn during production. He was drawn to her warmth, her talent, and her quiet radiance. By most accounts, Hepburn did not return those feelings in the same way, though she cared for him as a friend and a colleague. The emotional tension that came from this real-life situation added something to their scenes together that no director could have written into a script. There is a gentleness and a longing in Holden's performance that feels personal, not rehearsed. He was not just playing a man who loves a woman he cannot fully have. He was, in some small and complicated way, living it. The camera sees everything. It saw that too. What looked like a performance was something more. That wasn't just acting. It was real longing. Number 15. Audrey Hepburn and Hubert de Givenchy. When Sabrina returns from Paris in the film, she is wearing the most beautiful clothes the audience has ever seen. Those clothes were not created by the Paramount Pictures costume department. They came from a young French designer named Hubert de Givenchy, and their collaboration on this film changed the history of fashion. Hepburn had met Givenchy in Paris while preparing for the role. She needed clothes that would show Sabrina's transformation from a plain, invisible girl into a sophisticated woman. Givenchy designed several outfits for her, and they were breathtaking. The studio's head costumer, Edith Head, received the Academy Award for Best Costume Design for Sabrina. But she did not design Sabrina's most iconic looks. Givenchy did. This was a controversy in the fashion world for decades. Hepburn and Givenchy went on to become one of the most famous partnerships in the history of style. Their friendship lasted until Hepburn's death in 1993. It all began with a fairy tale about a chauffeur's daughter. The clothes were perfect, the credit was not. Number 13. The Paris That Never Was. In the film, Sabrina goes to Paris and comes back transformed. It is one of the most important journeys in the story. But here is the thing. Sabrina never actually went to Paris, not the real one. Billy Wilder filmed the Paris sequences entirely on a studio backlot in Hollywood. The streets, the cafes, the cooking school, all of it was built on sets. The art department worked to make it look and feel like the real City of Light, and they succeeded remarkably well. Audiences in 1954 were completely convinced. The Paris in the film has a dreamy, golden quality that the real city probably could not have provided as reliably. Studio Paris was a controlled version of the dream, every cobblestone placed exactly where the camera needed it, every lamplight angled for maximum romance. Real cities have traffic and noise and bad weather. This Paris had magic. Not every beautiful place is real. Sometimes the most beautiful ones are built. Number 12. The Score That Made You Feel Everything. Music for Sabrina was composed by Frederick Hollander, and it plays one of the most important invisible roles in the entire film. Every time Sabrina feels hope, or heartbreak, or wonder, the music is there guiding the audience's emotions with incredible gentleness. Hollander had been composing for Hollywood since the early days of talking pictures, and he understood something that many film composers forget. The best music does not announce itself. It does not show off. It simply wraps itself around the emotion already happening on screen and makes it feel 3 times deeper. The main theme of Sabrina is light and melancholy at the same time, like sunlight coming through a window on a cloudy day. It matches the story perfectly. A fairy tale that knows real life is complicated. The music won no major awards. It received little attention at the time. But if you took it away from the film, something essential would disappear. You would feel its absence without knowing what was missing. The music was invisible, and it was everything. Number 11. Wilder rewrote scenes. The night before filming. Billy Wilder was famous for not finishing his scripts before production started. He and Ernest Lehman would often write scenes the night before they were needed on set, sometimes arriving on the morning of filming with new pages still warm from the typewriter. For the actors, this was both exciting and terrifying. Bogart, in particular, found it deeply frustrating. He liked to prepare thoroughly. He wanted to know his lines well in advance. Coming to set in the morning with fresh pages he had never seen before made him angry and anxious. Holden and Hepburn adapted more easily, though even they felt the pressure of constantly shifting material. Wilder believed that last-minute writing kept the work alive and prevented actors from over-rehearsing their emotions into something mechanical. He wanted genuine surprise on camera. He sometimes got genuine annoyance instead. The tension between preparation and spontaneity ran through every scene. What felt chaotic in the making became seamless in the watching. That is the strange alchemy of great filmmaking. Number 10. The director and the star barely spoke. By the end of production on Sabrina, Humphrey Bogart and Billy Wilder were barely communicating. Their relationship had broken down so completely that they were passing messages through other people on set, rather than speaking directly to each other. Bogart gave several bitter interviews after filming was complete, criticizing Wilder openly. He called the director arrogant. He said Wilder showed favoritism to Hepburn and Holden. He felt that as the biggest name in the film, he deserved more respect and consideration. Wilder, in his own interviews, was characteristically sharp in response. He did not apologize. He did not soften his opinions. He suggested that Bogart had been difficult because he was uncomfortable with a role that required him to be vulnerable, and that vulnerability was not something the actor easily allowed. Both men were probably right, and both men were probably wrong. Great films are sometimes made in atmospheres of genuine conflict. Sabrina was elegant on screen. Behind the lens, the air crackled. What looked polished was built on friction. Number 9. The ending almost went differently. In the final film, Sabrina ends up with Linus, the older, serious brother played by Bogart. It is a satisfying conclusion that feels earned and emotionally true. But it was not always the planned ending. Early in the writing process, there were discussions about whether Sabrina should end up with David, the younger brother, the one she had always dreamed about. The original play leaned in this direction. Wilder and Lehman wrestled with this question seriously. In the end, they chose Linus because his arc, the emotional awakening of a man who has shut himself off from feeling, was the more interesting and more dramatic story. David was charming but shallow. Linus was cold but deep. The transformation of someone who has forgotten how to feel is more powerful than the confirmation of someone who has always felt too much. The ending they chose was braver. It asked the audience to root for the less obvious choice, and audiences did. They believed it, because the story had earned it. Number 8. Hepburn's real sadness on screen. Audrey Hepburn was going through a difficult personal time during the filming of Sabrina. She had recently ended a relationship that had meant a great deal to her, and the emotional weight of that loss was present with her every day on set. Billy Wilder, who was deeply perceptive about human emotion, noticed this. He did not try to shield her from it. Instead, he gently allowed some of that real sadness to live in Sabrina's longing for a man who cannot see her worth. The scene early in the film where Sabrina watches David Larrabee dancing with another woman, perched in a tree above the party, like a ghost, nobody noticed. That scene carries an ache that is extraordinary. Hepburn's face in that moment is not performing sadness. It is wearing it. The camera caught something that was not in the script. It caught a real woman's heart at a particular moment in her life. The performance and the person were the same. That was not acting. It was real sorrow finding the right story to live in. Number 7. The film that defined a decade's style. Sabrina did not just tell a love story. It told a generation of women what elegance could look like. When the film was released in 1954, the Sabrina neckline, a wide off-the-shoulder cut featured in one of Givenchy's designs, became an instant fashion sensation. Women across America wanted to dress like Sabrina. Department stores scrambled to produce versions of the clothes seen in the film. Fashion magazines ran articles about the Sabrina look. The influence was enormous and immediate. This was not unusual for Hollywood in the 1950s, but the speed and depth of Sabrina's impact on fashion was remarkable even by the standards of the time. A fictional chauffeur's daughter from a Long Island mansion became one of the most influential style figures of her decade. The character was invented. The influence was absolutely real. Sometimes a story reaches beyond the screen and actually changes what the world looks like. Sabrina did exactly that. Number 5. The chemistry that was not supposed to work. Nobody in Hollywood in 1953 would have put Humphrey Bogart and Audrey Hepburn together and expected magic. He was 54 years old, tough, weathered, and associated with crime dramas and war films. She was 24, delicate, luminous, and fresh from a fairy tale. The age gap alone was enormous. The stylistic gap was even wider. And yet, when you watch Sabrina, there are moments between them that are genuinely moving. When Linus begins to fall for Sabrina and tries to hide it, when Sabrina begins to see the real man behind the cold exterior, those scenes have an emotional weight that surprises you. Part of the credit goes to Wilder's direction, part goes to the script. But part of it, honestly, comes from the strange honesty of two very different people playing two very different people who find each other across an impossible distance. The chemistry was accidental. It was real. And it was exactly what the story needed. Number 4. The film almost lost its director. During pre-production, there was a period when it seemed possible that Billy Wilder would not direct Sabrina at all. Scheduling conflicts, creative disagreements with Paramount, and Wilder's own ambivalence about the material created a window of uncertainty. The studio had other directors in mind as backup options. Names were discussed, plans were partially drawn up. But Wilder held on, and the project held on to him, and eventually everything aligned. It is almost impossible to imagine Sabrina without him. His particular combination of European sophistication and American wit, his love of irony hidden inside sentimentality, his eye for the quiet moment that means everything. Those are not replaceable qualities. Another director might have made a perfectly pleasant film. Wilder made a film that still breathes 60 years later. The narrow miss haunts the imagination. What would have been lost? Everything, probably. Sometimes the right person and the right story barely find each other. This time, they did. Number 3. The Academy Award controversy. Sabrina received 6 Academy Award nominations in 1955, including Best Director for Billy Wilder, Best Actress for Audrey Hepburn, Best Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Best Art Direction, and Best Costume Design. It won Best Costume Design, which went to Edith Head. And here is where the controversy lives. The costumes that actually defined the film, the ones that caused a fashion revolution, were designed by Hubert de Givenchy. Head had created some of the less famous pieces in the wardrobe, but the iconic Parisian looks, the ones that appear in every image ever associated with the film, were Givenchy's work. Many in the fashion industry felt the award was given to the wrong person. Head, to her credit, never openly claimed Givenchy's work as her own, but she also did not correct the record loudly. The Academy's rules at the time were somewhat ambiguous about uncredited contributions from outside the studio system. What was beautiful on screen was created by invisible hands. The credit went elsewhere. Number 2. The Last Great Studio Fairy Tale. Sabrina was released in the late summer of 1954, and without anyone quite realizing it at the time, it was one of the last great examples of a particular kind of Hollywood film, the studio fairy tale. The system that produced it, where a studio controlled everything from the script to the costumes, to the stars under long-term contracts, was already beginning to crack. Television was taking audiences away. The old contract system was breaking down. Stars were gaining independence. Directors were winning new freedoms. Within a few years, the world that made Sabrina possible would be largely gone. The film was, in a strange and beautiful way, a goodbye to itself. A perfectly crafted dream made in the last moments when the dream machine still operated the way it had for decades. Audiences did not know they were watching an ending. The people making it may not have known either, but the film preserved something fragile just before it disappeared. And it still shines decades later because of exactly what it was, a perfect dream, made just in time. Number 1. The Girl in the Tree. Of all the images in Sabrina, one stands above the rest. It is the image of a young woman perched in a tree, watching the world of wealth and light below her, invisible to everyone she watches. This image, Sabrina in the tree above the Larrabee party, has become one of the most recognizable and emotionally powerful images in the history of Hollywood cinema. It says everything about longing, about being on the outside looking in, about wanting something beautiful that seems completely out of reach. Billy Wilder and his cinematographer Charles Lang composed the shot with extraordinary care. The light below is warm and golden. Sabrina above is in shadow. The distance between where she is and where she wants to be is perfectly visible in a single frame. What makes the image extraordinary is that it does not feel staged. It feels witnessed. It feels like something private and true that the camera stumbled upon rather than arranged. Hepburn in that tree is every person who has ever stood outside a door they were afraid to open. The shot took time to set up. The feeling it captures is timeless. Bonus fact: the perfume that never made it here is a story that almost nobody knows. During production of Sabrina, Audrey Hepburn and Hubert de Givenchy developed such a close working relationship that Givenchy began developing a new fragrance inspired by the character and the film. The perfume was meant to be tied to the movie's release, a marketing collaboration between the fashion house and the studio that would have been unusual and forward-thinking for its time. The project was discussed seriously, designs were considered, and there was genuine excitement about it. But the deal fell through during the final weeks before the film's release, the victim of complicated negotiations between Hollywood studios and European fashion houses who had not yet learned to work together in this way. The perfume never appeared. The idea was shelved. Years later, in 1957, Givenchy did create a famous perfume called L'Interdit, a name meaning the forbidden, and it was made exclusively for Audrey Hepburn before being released to the public. The connection between Hepburn and Givenchy that began with Sabrina eventually found its expression in a bottle. The collaboration that could not happen in 1954 happened 3 years later in a different form. Old dreams find new shapes. The fragrance of the past carries forward. Sabrina is a film about transformation, about a young woman who leaves home invisible and returns impossible to ignore. But it is also about something deeper. It is about the courage it takes to want something beautiful when you have been told your whole life that beautiful things are not for you. Every person who has ever dreamed bigger than their circumstances understood Sabrina the moment they saw her. The movie was made by difficult, brilliant, complicated people under conditions that were often stressful and sometimes painful. And somehow, out of all that difficulty, they made something that still feels like a warm light on a winter night. Something that makes you believe, for 2 hours at least, that the world can be kind and that love can find you in the most unexpected places. The facts behind the film are fascinating, but the feeling the film leaves you with, that is the real miracle. If you enjoyed these stories, please subscribe for more. Every movie hides a truth, and we will keep uncovering them, one story at a time.